My parents gave my room and savings to my stepbrother while I worked non-stop, so I moved out and revealed the truth they tried to hide. I'm a 24-year-old guy who's always felt like a guest in the house I grew up in, especially after my stepbrother moved in. The day my mom remarried, the air in our home changed, like warmth was quietly packed away and replaced with a polite chill. Everyone kept saying, "We're a family now, you'll adjust," but no one ever asked if I wanted to. From then on, everything revolved around my stepbrother's comfort, his routines, his moods, his spotless future, while I learned how to fold myself smaller. My room, barely wide enough for my bed and desk, became my only sanctuary, the place I hid when the laughter outside felt like it wasn't meant for me. I worked after school at a grocery store, the smell of detergent and overripe fruit clinging to my clothes as I stacked shelves for minimum wage. Every shift felt like a tiny rebellion, every dollar a brick toward freedom, a promise that someday I'd leave and breathe. Meanwhile, he slept in late, skipped chores, and joked about figuring life out later, while my parents nodded indulgently. When I tried to speak up, my mom sighed, "Be understanding," and my stepdad added, "You're the mature one, don't make this harder." Inside, I started believing that my needs were inconvenient, that love meant silence and patience. At dinner, their praise floated toward him like sunlight, while I sat in a quiet shadow pretending I didn't notice. "You're strong," my mom would say softly, as if strength meant swallowing disappointment without choking. I kept telling myself that if I stayed calm, if I endured, if I proved I was good enough, they'd finally see me too. I imagined silence would cost me, and something was unfolding behind the door of the room that belonged to me. This happened when I was 18, and I started noticing the pattern I had spent years trying to ignore. My stepbrother would casually drop hints about something he wanted, and within days it would appear: a new phone, branded sneakers, gaming headphones that cost more than my entire weekly paycheck. When I finally worked up the courage to ask for a new backpack because mine was tearing at the seams, my stepdad frowned and said, "You still have one, don't be wasteful." But when my stepbrother laughed and said, "Mine's outdated," my mom smiled and replied, "We'll look into it, sweetheart." I started hearing it more clearly then, the little differences disguised as normal. "He just needs a bit more support," my mom would whisper, as if I was supposed to understand. "You're more independent," my stepdad would add proudly, like that was some prize instead of a curse. I'd sit at the kitchen table, fluorescent light humming above, watching them dote on him while my voice dissolved into the background noise of forks and clinking plates. One evening, when I mentioned how unfair it felt, my mom looked genuinely confused. "Why are you making things difficult?" she asked. "We treat you both the same." I remember staring at the beige wall behind her, wondering how the truth could feel so invisible. My stepbrother snorted under his breath and muttered, "Drama," before scrolling on his brand new phone. I stopped asking after that. I started storing my paycheck somewhere they couldn't touch, a secret savings jar tucked under my bed, each envelope labeled with shaky handwriting: college, rent, escape. Every bill I paid, every shift I worked, felt heavier, like I was building a life no one in this house cared about. Still, I told myself this was temporary, that once they saw how responsible I was, they'd finally respect me. But late at night, as laughter echoed from his bigger room and the hallway light leaked under my door, a quiet fear settled in my chest, because I could feel something waiting to be taken next. This happened when I was 20, the day I came home from a double shift and felt my stomach drop before I even opened my door. The hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner, and for a second I thought I'd walked into the wrong house. Then I saw my name taped crookedly to a cardboard box, sitting outside my room like a quiet eviction notice. When I pushed the door open, my heart stuttered. My posters were gone. My desk was shoved into the corner. My bed had been dragged halfway into the hallway like it no longer belonged anywhere. Inside, my stepbrother stood in the middle of what used to be my space, grinning as he tested out a new gaming chair. "Sick, right?" he said, spinning around like this was some grand upgrade. I just stared, my chest burning, words caught behind my teeth. My mom appeared behind me, overly cheerful, the kind of tone people use when they know they're doing something wrong. "Sweetheart, he needs more room for his studies and hobbies," she explained. "You're hardly ever here anyway." I whispered, "So where do I go?" and my stepdad shrugged. "We set up a space near the laundry. It's temporary. You're adaptable." Adaptable. Like my life was a storage solution. I carried my boxes past them in silence, the cool tile underneath my bare feet reminding me how grounded I felt, as in stuck, while they rearranged the only sanctuary I'd ever known. My new room was barely a corner, the air thick with detergent and damp clothes, the hum of the washing machine replacing what used to be quiet safety. That night, I lay staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to my stepbrother laughing on his headset, his voice echoing through the walls that used to protect me. I told myself not to cry. I told myself this wasn't permanent. But deep down, something twisted painfully, like the last proof I belonged had just been handed over, sealed with a smile. And as I closed my eyes, I couldn't shake the thought that this wasn't the only thing they planned to take from me next. This happened a few weeks after my room was taken, when I logged into my bank app out of habit and felt my stomach drop again, only this time it was sharper, colder. The balance didn't look right. The numbers felt unfamiliar, like someone had reached in and reshaped the future I'd been quietly building. I refreshed the page twice, convinced it was a glitch, but the missing amount just stared back at me, undeniable and cruel. That money had been my safety net. Every late shift, every aching shoulder, every skipped hangout had gone into that account, the only proof I was working toward escape. My hands were trembling when I walked into the kitchen and said, "Did either of you touch my savings?" My mom didn't even look surprised. She just sighed and wiped her hands on a dish towel like I'd asked something inconvenient. "We borrowed a little," she said calmly. "Your stepbrother needed help with some school expenses." "A little?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "That's years of my life in there." My stepdad leaned back in his chair and muttered, "It's family money. You live under this roof, don't you?" The way he said it made it sound like I was indebted just for existing. From the hallway, my stepbrother called out, laughing, "Relax, man, I needed an upgrade." "You'll make more, you always do." Something inside me went cold. I stood there, the smell of burnt toast hanging in the air, the kitchen suddenly feeling smaller, tighter, like the walls were pressing in to silence me. "You didn't even ask," I whispered. My mom's face hardened. "We're not stealing from you," she snapped. "You're being dramatic. Be grateful we're still supporting you." Supporting me. The words echoed like a cruel joke. That night, as I lay on my thin mattress near the laundry, the faint vibration of the washing machine beneath me felt like my pulse trying to stay alive. I stared at the ceiling while anger twisted through my chest, heavier than the exhaustion I'd grown used to carrying. I wasn't just invisible anymore. I was being used. And deep down, a terrifying realization began to take shape: if they could take my room, and now my money, what else did they already feel entitled to? "You said." I tried to believe maybe there had been some misunderstanding, some twisted logic I could reason with if I just explained myself calmly enough. So I waited until dinner, until everyone was seated, until the table was filled with the smell of fried onions and the dull clatter of cutlery, pretending we were still a normal family. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat as I finally said, "We need to talk about my savings." The room went quiet, but not the kind of quiet that felt safe. The kind that makes your skin crawl. "I worked for that money," I added, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You didn't have the right to touch it without asking." My mom's eyes narrowed instantly. "We already told you, it was for family," she snapped. "Why are you bringing this up again?" My stepdad slammed his fork down and said, "You're acting ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." I felt something twist painfully inside my chest. "You took thousands from me," I said, barely louder than a whisper. "That was my future." My stepbrother smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You're so dramatic, man. It's not like you're homeless or something." His words burned. My mom shook her head like I was disappointing her. "You're trying to split this family apart," she said. "You should be ashamed." The word ashamed echoed in my mind like a verdict, while the unfairness clawed at my ribs. I tried again, softer this time. "All I wanted was to be asked, to be respected." "You're not the only one in this house," my stepdad cut in, cold and final. "Stop acting like a victim." And just like that, the conversation turned. I wasn't the son who'd sacrificed years of his life. I was the selfish one. The troublemaker. The ungrateful burden. Their voices blurred into noise as the room spun, the walls suddenly feeling farther away than ever before. I pushed my chair back and walked out without another word, the sound of my stepbrother laughing quietly following me down the hall like a shadow that refused to let go. That night, lying in my cramped corner beside the humming washing machine, I realized something terrifying: they didn't see me as someone who deserved fairness. They saw me as a resource. And if speaking up made me the villain, I started to wonder just how far they were willing to go to keep me silent. This happened a few nights later, when I came home late and heard voices I wasn't supposed to. The house was dark except for the faint glow spilling from my parents' bedroom, and I could hear my mom whispering, tense and shaky, like her words were made of glass. I froze in the hallway when she said, "He can't find out how bad it really is. If he knows where his money went, he'll leave." My breath caught. My stepdad replied in a low growl, "We had no choice. Your son has destroyed his credit. The school already warned us he's failing again." There was a long pause, and then my mom's voice broke. "He owes people money. Real people. If we don't keep paying, they'll start asking questions." That's when it hit me: my savings hadn't gone to school expenses or family needs. They were covering my stepbrother's secret debt, his lying, his failures, his mess, all while I was working myself into exhaustion to survive. I pressed my palm against the cold wall to steady myself, the paint rough and unfamiliar under my skin, as the reality carved deeper into my chest. "We can take a little more from him next month," my stepdad said casually. "He won't fight it. He never does." My mom sighed. "He's always been the easy one. The easy one." My throat burned, a mixture of rage and heartbreak choking me as I finally stepped back and crept away, my pulse hammering in my ears. In my corner near the laundry, I sank onto the mattress, staring at the ceiling, the dull hum of the dryer vibrating through my bones like an echo of everything I'd just heard. All those years they'd praised my strength weren't love. They were strategy. Convenience. Permission to bleed me dry in silence. A cold, terrifying clarity settled into me then: they weren't just unfair, they were calculating. And as I lay there in the dim light, something inside me shifted quietly, dangerously, because for the first time, I wasn't thinking about how to endure. I was thinking about how to disappear before they took the rest of me. After that night, something in me went unnervingly calm, like the storm inside had finally named itself and decided to wait. I kept moving through the house the same way I always had, quiet, compliant, forgettable, but every step now felt deliberate, measured, like I was already halfway gone. When my mom asked, "You okay lately?" "You've been quiet," I forced a small smile and said, "Just tired," because the truth felt too sharp to speak. Inside, though, my mind was working nonstop. Every shift at the grocery store, every late hour on my feet, every aching muscle now had a new purpose. I wasn't just saving anymore. I was escaping. I opened a new account they didn't know about, using a different email, hiding the card behind an old textbook under loose floorboards. Each paycheck slipped into that invisible future felt like oxygen trickling back into my lungs. I started skipping meals, picking up overtime, letting exhaustion hollow me out if it meant getting out sooner. At home, I became a ghost of who I used to be. I stopped reacting when my stepbrother bragged about new purchases, stopped flinching when my parents asked, "Can you help out a little more this month?" I just nodded, mumbled, "Yeah," and retreated before they could see how carefully I was pulling away. One afternoon, my mom cornered me in the kitchen. The air smelled like boiled rice and artificial lemon. "You're not planning anything stupid, are you?" she asked, half joking, half suspicious. My heart stuttered, but my face stayed blank. What would I even do? I replied, keeping my voice calm while my hands trembled slightly against the counter. She smiled, relieved too easily. "Good. We need you right now." "Need you." The words echoed long after she left the room, twisting something raw inside me. Because they didn't need me as a son. They needed me as a solution, a wallet, a quiet shadow that fixed problems and never asked why. That night, lying in the thin darkness beside the laundry machines, listening to their mechanical breathing, I stared at my cracked phone screen and calculated timelines in my head. Weeks. Maybe a month. If I stayed careful. But as I closed my eyes, a heavy fear crept in alongside the determination, because I knew one thing with terrifying certainty: they weren't done asking for me yet, and if they sensed I was slipping away, they wouldn't let go easily. This happened faster than I was prepared for, like they could sense the distance growing and decided to crush it before it became permanent. I walked in after another brutally long shift, my legs aching, sweat dried cold against my skin, and my mom was already waiting in the living room with that forced calm smile she used when something was wrong. "Sit down," she said softly, patting the couch like this was going to be a conversation and not a trap. My stepdad stood behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight. My stepbrother hovered near the doorway, pretending not to listen, but his smirk gave him away. "We need more help," my mom began, eyes glossy with carefully rehearsed emotion. "Your brother's situation got worse. If you really care about this family, you'll step up again." I felt my chest tighten. "I already gave you everything," I said, my voice low, strained. "You took my savings. You took my room. What else do you want?" My stepdad scoffed. "Don't raise your voice. You're not a victim here. You're selfish if you won't help when family needs you." The word selfish made something inside me snap. "I worked myself sick for that money," I whispered. "You didn't even ask." My mom's face hardened instantly. "So now you're abandoning us? After all we've done for you," she shot back. "You'd let us drown just to prove a point?" My stepbrother laughed lightly. "God, you're so dramatic. It's just money. Just money. Like it wasn't my sleepless nights, my sacrificed youth, my only exit." "I can't," I said, my voice breaking despite my effort. "I can't keep doing this." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating, before my stepdad leaned forward and said coldly, "If you don't help, don't expect to be welcome here anymore." The words hit harder than any slap. In that moment, something collapsed inside me. I wasn't their son. I wasn't even family. I was leverage. A tool they threatened to discard the second I stopped being useful. I stood there shaking, breath shallow, the stale scent of carpet and old furniture surrounding me as they watched to see whether guilt would win. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly hollow, like there was nothing left they hadn't already taken, and still, they weren't finished. I woke up the next day with my body stiff and my mind eerily quiet, like something inside me had already packed its bags while the rest of me pretended to breathe. The early sunlight slipped through the dusty blinds, painting faint stripes across the floor that didn't feel like home anymore. Somewhere down the hall, my stepbrother laughed into his phone, and the sound curdled in my chest like sour milk. I stared at the cracked ceiling and realized this was the first morning I didn't feel hope, just urgency. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if the air itself could expose me. Every item I owned felt suddenly fragile as I folded it into an old backpack, a few shirts, worn jeans, the notebook where I tracked my hidden savings, the faded photo of me before everything shifted. My hands kept shaking, and I whispered to myself, "Just breathe," because the panic pressed so hard it almost stole oxygen. When I stepped into the hallway, the scent of burnt toast and cheap coffee hung heavy, and my mom's voice floated from the kitchen. "You're running late again," she called out. "Yeah," I replied, forcing casual into my tone. "Just another shift." She didn't even look at me when I passed. "No, be careful." "No, love you." Just silence wrapped in routine. Outside, the cold morning air hit my face like something honest, sharp and clean compared to the suffocating warmth inside that house. I stood on the front steps for a moment, my chest pounding as I stared at the familiar front door, the paint chipped where my childhood fingerprints used to be. I realized that place had stopped being my home long before today. I had just been slow enough to notice. I walked to the bus stop with nothing but my backpack and a heart that felt scraped raw, every step whispering, "Don't look back. Don't look back." When my phone buzzed, I flinched. A message from my mom lit up the cracked screen. "Where are you going so early?" I watched the typing bubble appear beneath it almost immediately after. And that's when the fear really settled in, because if they already sensed I was pulling away, I had no idea how far they'd go to drag me back. I didn't respond to her message right away. I just stood there at the bus stop, fingers numb, watching the screen glow like a tiny spotlight I wasn't ready to step into yet. The bus hissed as it pulled up, the smell of diesel and cold metal filling my lungs, and as I climbed on, I realized I couldn't keep whispering my pain into silence anymore. If they had been bold enough to take everything from me, then I could be bold enough to tell the truth. So I did something I'd never dared to do before. I opened my social media and started typing. My hands trembled as I wrote about my room being taken, about my savings disappearing without consent, about overhearing my parents admit they were using me to cover my stepbrother's hidden debts. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't soften it either. I just told it exactly as it happened, raw and shaking and real, attaching screenshots of my bank withdrawals and dates I could still remember like scars. The post felt like ripping open a wound, but also like letting it finally breathe. Within minutes, notifications exploded. Relatives I barely spoke to commented, "Is this true?" Old school friends messaged, "I had no idea you went through this." Even neighbors I used to wave at on trash day reacted in stunned disbelief. I sat there on the bus, knuckles white around my phone, watching the narrative flip in real time, watching people see me for the first time not as the ungrateful problem, but as the kid who'd been quietly drained dry. Then my phone started ringing. Over and over. Mom. Stepdad. Mom again. I didn't answer. A message popped up instead. "Delete this right now. You're humiliating us," my mother wrote. "You don't know what you're doing." I stared at the words, my heart pounding so hard it physically hurt. Another message followed almost instantly. "We can talk. Come home and we'll fix this. Fix this." The bus windows reflected my face back at me, pale, exhausted, older than I had any right to look, and I suddenly realized this wasn't just about escape anymore. This was about finally being heard, even if it cost everything. And as my phone continued to buzz in my trembling hand, one terrifying thought crept in. If they were this desperate through a screen, what would happen when they found me face to face? I should have known they wouldn't let the silence stay quiet for long. It was just past evening when the pounding started, sharp, desperate fists slamming against the thin door of the small rented room I'd barely managed to afford. The hallway smelled of stale carpet and cheap air freshener, and I froze on the edge of my mattress, my phone still lit up with missed calls and unread messages. "Open the door," my stepdad's voice barked from the other side. "Don't make this worse than it already is." My chest tightened. Worse. Like they hadn't already torn me apart. "I just want to talk," my mom called, her voice suddenly soft, almost sweet, the same tone she used when convincing me to give up something that mattered. I stepped closer but didn't unlock it, the cold metal pressing into my trembling fingers. "You didn't want to talk when you stole from me," I said through the door, my voice shaking but firm. "You just wanted my silence." There was a pause, then a forced sigh. "You're exaggerating," she replied. You always do when you're emotional. The word emotional felt like being slapped. My stepbrother muttered from behind her, "This is so pathetic," and I imagined his face, still smug, still untouched by guilt. My stepdad snapped, "You've dragged our name through the dirt online. Delete the post and come home. We'll forget all this happened." Forget. As if the years of being erased could be wiped away with a button. "I'm not deleting anything," I said, my throat burning. "For once, people know the truth. You think strangers care about you more than your own family," my mom shot back, voice cracking between anger and panic. "You're throwing everything away over pride." I closed my eyes, leaning my forehead against the door as memories flooded, the laundry corner, the missing money, the room that stopped being mine, the night I heard their plans to drain me dry. My breathing turned shallow as their voices rose, overlapping, desperate. "Just open the door," my stepdad demanded, sharper now. "We're your parents. You owe us at least that." "Oh." The word echoed like a chain tightening around my throat as my hand hovered over the lock, torn between fear and resolve, knowing whatever waited on the other side would change everything again. And I wasn't sure if I was about to face them, or finally shut them out forever. I didn't open the door. My hand hovered there for a second longer, feeling the vibration of their knocking travel through the cheap wood, through my bones, through years of swallowed hurt, and then I stepped back. "You don't get to decide when I forgive you," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. The hallway went still, like even they weren't used to hearing me sound so sure. "You're making a mistake," my mom whispered, and for a split second, the tremor in her voice almost pulled at an old instinct inside me. But that instinct had been built on fear, not love. "You already made yours," I replied, and something in the air shifted, heavy with realization they couldn't rewrite anymore. After a few tense moments, their footsteps retreated, slow and bitter, leaving behind only the faint echo of their anger and the silence I'd been denied my whole life. I slid down to the floor, my back against the door, chest rising and falling in shaky breaths. The room smelled like dust and unfamiliar detergent, but for the first time, it smelled like mine. The world outside the thin window felt distant and raw, like everything I didn't know how to rebuild yet. I opened my phone again, seeing messages of support still pouring in, strangers telling me I was brave, telling me I deserved better, and for once I didn't feel ridiculous believing them. "I'm trying to figure life out," I murmured to myself, staring at the dim ceiling as if it might answer back. I thought about the kid who'd stayed quiet, who'd believed endurance meant love, who'd waited years for someone to finally notice him. I realized I was still grieving that boy, but I was also protecting him now. My fingers brushed the cold floor as I sat there, emotions tangling between relief and grief, exhaustion and fragile hope. I didn't feel completely healed. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt awake. And as the night settled around me, deeper and quieter than any I'd known, one thought kept circling through my chest: if this is what freedom feels like, then maybe the real story was only just beginning.